thank you so much for being here. I know there's not been a huge amount of work in-person events. We're so happy to have you here. And an amazing blend of residents, public sector, and private sector, which is just the dream for us as an organization. So for those of you who don't know us, I'm Sarah Watson, the Interim Executive Director at Citizens Housing and Planning Council, CHPC. We're a nonprofit think tank focused on housing policy and planning. I want to thank NYU so much for hosting. They've been extraordinary. And really, like, we were super annoying, and they really went above and beyond to accommodate us, and especially Monica Estrada, if she's around. We're so grateful. And we're so happy to do this as a partnership event with Brownsville Partnership. We've found real synergy in both of our works currently. We both have long-term standing relationships with affordable housing providers and housing authorities and residents in the UK. Especially because they are incredible. I'm sort of biased, I'm originally from the UK, but they really are incredible pioneers in housing policy, real like world leaders in innovative housing policy, and especially about the elevation of the role of residents in the planning of the future of their homes. So Brownsville Partnership will talk about their long-standing relationship with Poplar HARCA, who we're going to hear from today. Since about 2018, CHPC has been studying the UK and how we can really learn about best practices for the improvement of public housing conditions, of which the UK has really been on this for 20-30 years. And for us, the special ingredients, there's a few things in the UK, but especially is their elevation of resident decision-making, real resident decision-making in the planning of their homes, design, development, rehabilitation, but then also ongoing operations and property management. So there's some of our reports in the front from our major study called Public Housing Revolution, which looks at best practices in the UK. We recently released a toolkit for how residents can be involved in property management of their homes. You should have a sample plan we put together on your chair. We'll talk about that just at the end. And just finally, you know, we're not going to dwell too much about the differences between the UK and the US and London and New York. There are differences, contextual differences. They're important to understand. But I think here today, we're all about pulling out the approaches, the principles that worked so well for successful rehabilitation, redevelopment, and new management of homes in the UK. And I think in particular, we're going to hear a lot about the word regeneration in the UK, especially resident-led regeneration. And it's really looking beyond just when you get some capital in for repairs for public housing, looking beyond the rehabilitation and redevelopment physically of homes, but also how can you be regenerating opportunities for communities and how they can really be involved in the long-term operation and management of their buildings, and also a stake in their communities moving forward. So we have a lot, we're making progress in New York, but we really still need to learn from these pioneers in the UK. So with that, I'm very happy to intro the Executive Director of Brownsville Partnership, Casa Balai.
Thanks so much, Sarah. My name is Casa Balai. I'm super excited to be here this morning with you all. And yes, I am the Executive Director of the Brownsville Partnership, one of the three organizations alongside NYU's Shack Institute for Real Estate and the Citizens Housing and Planning Council that has co-organized this panel for you all today. Brownsville Partnership, just briefly, is a community-based organization in, you guessed it, Brownsville, Brooklyn, that is working with residents from NYCHA's Seth Low houses to create plans for a full-scale modernization effort on the campus, from unit repairs to improvements to building systems, to considering new infrastructure, enhanced social services, and really critically, resident-led property management. Over the weekend, we worked alongside NYCHA to offer a one-on-one workshop on PACT, or Preserving Affordability Commitment Together, the financing vehicle that's on offer for Seth Low residents. And yesterday, with our Poplar HARCA guests, we had the privilege of touring some units at the NYCHA Sethlo development, and it really underscored the urgency and the importance of the topic at hand today, which is how residents can be involved with and even lead the planning, the development, and the implementation of their vision for how their NYCHA communities can be rehabilitated or regenerated in British parlance, as you're about to hear, in partnership with NYCHA and stakeholders from the private and nonprofit developer community. So as you will hear in the dialogue we're about to kick off, a key theme will be that trust is the cornerstone of any partnership. And one outcome I hope we contribute towards with this panel is that PAC developers in the room, property managers and other stakeholders take away a concrete understanding of how to build that trust as you listen to Poplar, HARCA, and their experiences in East London and the CHPC toolkit presentation on resident property management. And for our NYCHA residents in the audience and live streaming this panel, I hope you feel inspired by what's been accomplished in the UK and motivated to hold on to your justifiable skepticism, but also embrace the opportunity for disrupting a status quo that has been woefully inadequate for far too long. And before we get into everything, I just want to set up a surprise welcome video from a woman who's really dear to Brownsville, Alika Ampry-Samuel, who's the former city council person and now the HUD regional administrator for New York City. And she is a woman who I think initiated this relationship with Poplar HARCA for us alongside Mr. Bowman, the Sethlo Resident Association president. So she has some special words for our guests from the UK, and I just want to acknowledge her because I think without her introduction, we wouldn't have been at this event today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alika Ampry-Samuel, the Regional Administrator for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD. I was appointed by President Biden in January to serve in this role, and I represent the state of New York and the state of New Jersey. The last time we were together, I was a member of the New York City Council, and I had an opportunity to visit you. And that was in 2019, before we all went into a pandemic. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to just say hello to you today, but I'm very excited about your opportunity to meet with our NYCHA residents and to be able to have a robust conversation about the work that you've been doing in Poplar HARCA with the Citizen Housing Planning Council, and just making sure that residents have a voice at the table. That was the discussion that we had the last time we were together. So since that time, New York, the New York legislature passed and Governor Hochul signed what is known as the New York City Housing Authority's Preservation Trust. And this is a piece of legislation that will directly address the renovation to address capital repair needs for 25,000 units of public housing here in New York City. I think you all call this social housing in London. So this is an opportunity not to just renovate the units, but the key part here is to make sure that residents have a seat at the table, and residents are at the table deciding on who the developer is going to be and making sure that they are part of the conversation around the designing of the units that are being renovated, and also just really having a stake. Also part of this new legislation here in New York is an opportunity for the residents to form resident management corporations, for the residents to be part of the management companies, residents being able to manage their own buildings. That's huge for New York. But we've had those conversations in London with Poplar HARCA, with you all who are doing amazing work. And so again, I'm glad that you're able to have a conversation directly with our NYCHA residents. And I really hope that the conversation leads to even more change and modernization right here in New York City. And so with that, I wish you all an amazing time, an amazing discussion and conference. And I look forward to hearing all about the outcome of the conversation and what we all can do moving forward to make sure that all residents of public housing and social housing live in safe, affordable, and beautiful conditions and be able to preserve our housing stock for future generations. Have a great time, everyone, and I hope to see you soon. Hi, everyone.
All right, and with that, I want to invite our special guests from the UK with the Poplar HARCA Housing Regeneration Agency up to the stage. And we're going to start out with a presentation about Poplar HARCA from two special guests, Babu Bhattacharjee, Director of Communities and Neighborhoods, and Tanya Martin, who's a resident and Vice Chair of the Poplar Board.
Morning, everyone. My name is Babu Bhattacharjee, as Kasa was saying, and I'm the Director of Communities and Neighbourhoods at Poplar HARCA. So let me tell you a bit about our resident leadership approach, but also I think a bit about us. And I hope everyone can, oh, can you hear me? Should I come a bit closer? Okay, how's this? Is this better? Okay, great. Okay, good. So the first thing I was going to tell you about is something about our purpose. So we've been going for 22 years. We started really in a position where residents were crying out for change. And the thing for us was this idea of joint opportunities, creating opportunities together, something around that community potential, that untapped well that exists within all our communities, that in some ways we've sort of ignored or kind of held back or just not embraced. And so that community potential is a massive engine for change, and really important that we create the opportunities to do that. Exceptional homes, I think we can all agree that we need homes that are fit for purpose, that are great places to live, and that allow our families and our residents to thrive. And that comes to the places themselves. So people make places, and if you don't have places that reflect that real kind of community personality, it really needs to have that sense of, what is this place about? What do residents care about it? Why are they so involved? If you can't show that, then places can't thrive. And social justice, key to us and what we do, key to our residents. That's such a big thing around this idea. And I just wanted to talk about social justice. So I don't know if many of you know about George Lansbury. You probably know his daughter, Angela Lansbury, quite a big kind of star. But George Lansbury was one of the Rates the Rebels in 1921, probably. And Poplar is the place where it started. So that kind of mission to give people who are in poverty the resources to deal with that, to own their own successes, and to have the means to really kind of come out of poverty. That's really key to us. That was key to George Lansbury. That's the legacy that we build on. Yeah, so right. So this is a bit of an orientation slide, and I guess for us, it sort of shows we're in the middle of some amazing spaces. Canary Wharf, the business district, Bank in the City, again, you know, an important financial district, the airport, these amazing Olympic Park and Stratford City, which has been regenerated through that Olympic legacy. But us in the middle, kind of the heart of London's poverty, until not long ago, the heart of UK's poverty. So it really was a place of opportunity that had kind of been forgotten. And so it's really important for us to understand proximity, to understand what location gives us, but also to recognize that if we don't take that opportunity, then people will always pass us by. And so it's really important to put us on the map in a way that some of the other places around us have been put on the map, and make that case for ourselves. And I guess one of the things I was going to say was the resonance with the community of Brownsville, the Cethlo population, is astounding. We see a lot of parallels in the kinds of things that we're talking about and what is happening in that area. And that fire of resident engagement, that wanting to be part of the bigger plans for change and shaping that change, is so critical, and we can see it coming through. And residents will fight for what they want, but they need allies. So it's really important that we give them that opportunity to really make a great place. I think I'm starting off with something that probably, again, like Brownsville, you could understand. This is what we came into, and this is why there was no trust. And this, I could be showing you a slide from 200 years ago. Charles Booth did some maps around poverty 200 years ago, and they showed a very similar situation for East London and for Poplar. So in a way, I'm talking about failure for generations. We've not managed to change things for so long. And that's been good people trying to do good things, but just not being able to make that connection with the change that needs to happen, with the state, with all the kind of players that are going to make this happen. So yeah, I won't run through that list, but for me, ill health, the years of good health, so not just kind of the life expectancy, but the years of good life that you can have were so limited in our area. And for us, that was a tragedy and something that had to change. And so this point about the beginning, and I'm only talking about the beginning of 20 odd years ago, but it's the point that we have to do something different. We have to change it up, because if we didn't, we would have to accept that there would be other generations of failure. And that was something that we weren't prepared to accept. So again, you know, some terrible stats from our point of view. The poorest health in the UK, a large population of young people, which meant that services had to be some of the best, but actually they were some of the worst. And our residents were battling uphill. And I think we see the potential. I talked about the potential, but if you're not bringing income into the family, if you're not getting access to education, if you're not in good health, then your opportunities for change are limited by those factors. So now, what do? So we come along 20 odd years ago, and we come with a package. So we come with money to improve housing, to make things work, to change the circumstances by investing in the area and in the green spaces and in the amenities around it. But it also has to be backed up by resident governance. And that was a key thing for us. When we started, the difference, the trust building element was not only were we going to work as hard as we could to deliver change, but we were going to have residents at the heart of that evolution. So when we started, our tenants were a third of our board membership. We increased that rapidly so that they became the majority on our board. And that process put us into severe kind of issues with the regulator. So we're regulated, we have a viability grade, we have a governance grade, and the inspectors were coming down looking at us and saying, can residents really manage your organisation? You're talking about a multi-million-pound organisation. How can residents be in charge of that? And we showed them the skills that those residents had. Residents were our chair. Christine Searle was our first resident chair. She spoke with conviction. She was named one of the most influential people in housing, but her background, her skills were living that life, living in those homes, understanding those homes, talking to other residents. That's what gave her the skills, not something she learned at university, not something she learned on the job. These were human skills, and this is what drove us. So what I also want to kind of point out is that we're not rejecting the idea of skills being important. They are so important. And Tanya is going to talk more about that in her part of this in a minute. But we have to build those skills. So the skills are there. Many of the skills are there. We build the rest of them, and we never underplay that. The residents have to be right for what they do. We have a focus on young people. I talked about that high density of young people. So that really becomes something that is pivotal to what we do. Those new generations coming up. And then there's a part of this, which is about young people taking part in their community, being part of managing their homes, being part of wider civic life, being engaged in local politics, being engaged in local life. And that comes from us providing that platform for it to happen. We have focus boards, which really allow residents to get engaged in issues in a deep way and really kind of make that transition from understanding their homes to understanding how to run a business. So the community model, the evolution of the community model, now we're talking about the idea of we will source all the needs that we have from the local community first and foremost. If we can't find it there, and generally we can, we'll look further afield. So that might be London-wide, that might be UK-wide, but essentially it's saying we think we've got everything we need on the ground. And then a little bit about structure before I hand over to Tanya. So there's this idea of the board. So we have that, and then you can see that there's a whole range of elements of governance that really make sure that we're on top of everything we do. Risk, finances, the delivery of our services. And you can also see residents pushing at both sides. So I've already talked about residents at the top of the structure. They're also coming through from our youth board, from our estate boards and gatherings, and from the joint estates panel, which is basically a cross-section of all our residents across all our areas. So I'll now talk a little bit about skills-based community governance. So it's just saying that it's part of the National Housing Federation Code. So as I said, we're governed and we're part of this in a bigger way. But really, the main person who needs to talk about this is Tanya. So Tanya, please come up.
I must apologise, I am rather short, so if you can't see me, I do apologise, but I'm sure my colleagues will tell you I never fail to be loud. So that's a good thing. So yeah, good morning everybody. My name is Tanya Martin and I've been involved with the governance of Poplar HARCA for the last 10 years. I'm currently the Vice Chair of Poplar HARCA, but most importantly and above all else, I am a resident. And what that means is that I come with over 20 years of lived experience of understanding the needs and the struggles of our local community. So I'm really super pleased to be here to be able to just share with you a little bit about Poplar HARCA's approach to governance and resident involvement and scrutiny as well. So as Babby started to explain, in the UK, the National Housing Federation sets the standards for governance for the housing sector, and Poplar HARCA does adopt this code. And the code was last updated in 2020, and I will literally quote from what it says here, and it stipulates that the housing associations must ensure that the views and needs of their residents are at the heart of their strategic decision making. Now, when that code came into effect, many housing associations in the UK started to scramble because they had not been doing that and had to start looking at their governance differently. Thankfully, HARCA had been doing that, as Babby just said, for many, many years. And we were really ahead of the curve in that respect. Resident engagement and involvement has always sat at the heart of everything that we do. And it's why I have been so devoted to the organisation, because it really does align with my own values as well around that. And I think that's something we've successfully kind of evolved over many years of working with our residents and really learning from them. And as Babby said, we take a skills-based community approach to our governance, and this means that we believe that all the skills that we need to effectively scrutinise and to govern our organisation sits within our existing community. You just have to go out and engage. You just have to go out and reach people to find those skills. And I think within that skills system, we ensure that we have a really diverse range of experience, background and skills within our committees and board. And we provide lots of opportunities for learning and for development as well to increase those skills of residents. And our committees are proven kind of training grounds for our main board. So many residents and many members of our governance structure began on those other committees that Babby just talked about, whether that be services, finance, audit and risk. And actually what we've then done is kind of use those committees to train and develop our kind of resident members and other members right the way up to board level, so that they can influence that kind of decision making at every single level. And we really focus on developing those people. We never compromise, as Babby said, on the skills that we want and need, but we always look to residents first to find those skills before looking kind of elsewhere or further afield. So in addition to our governance, there are lots of other ways that residents can get involved in shaping the work and services of Poplar HARCA. And over the years, we've tried and tested a lot of different methods to engage residents. And I'll just highlight one or two here in the essence of kind of time. So contractor monitoring is something we started quite a few years ago, and our residents are involved in monitoring contractor performance on all of our estates. So they carry out resident surveys via telephone or kind of face-to-face to understand residents' experiences of our repairs and technical services. And They are involved in contractor review panels as well. So they actually sit down in front of contractors and will feed back to them what is not working, what is working, where we can improve. And they also inform the procurement of new contractors as well. So residents are involved in everything around our technical repairs and maintenance, from sourcing the contractors right the way up to evaluating their performance. And we also scrutinise that performance through our services committee as well. So we see regular reporting on how our contractors are performing and hold them to account if they are not. Other one I'd just like to quickly mention is complaints. So we have a really robust complaint system, which, as you know, is really, really important for housing, because you get many, many complaints around many different things. And they really, our residents really shape and scrutinise our complaints process. They inform our policies and our procedures around how we, kind of administer complaints and deal with them. But they also sit on our review panels for complaints to make sure that the process is fair and transparent and robust for residents. So it's more objective, and it's not just staff that are reviewing those complaints, but actually residents are reviewing them as well, and making sure that we come to a kind of good solution. So some of these ideas, I think the staff will agree, have been more successful than others. But I think what I value so much about Poplar HARCA and being part of this organisation is that we are not afraid to take risks. We are not afraid to innovate. We're not afraid to try new things. And we always, always listen to our residents, which I think is why we have the confidence to do those things, because we're very much guided by our residents. And as a result of that, we continuously learn, we continuously evolve, and we continuously build that strong foundational relationship with our residents and that really much needed trust that Babu talked about earlier. So our approach to resident involvement, I think, has been really, really successful. I'm a product of that, having been here for 10 years. I think, like I said, the organisation wasn't aligned to what I feel resident involvement is about. I would have left after the first few months. And I'm sure lots of housing associations, are struggling with this concept. But Poplar HARCA, in all honesty, have nailed it in terms of resident engagement and resident scrutiny. And I think as a business, we've benefited hugely from having so much resident engagement and involvement, but so have our communities and so have our residents, more importantly. And I think it's really good that we take residents on a journey of development, and we work really closely with them to build their knowledge, build their skills, so that they can really thrive within our governance, but also within their own communities as well. So just a bit about kind of my journey, I suppose. And my journey began with Poplar HARCA in 2012, when I moved into a new development that, hey-ho, had issues, which is often how many residents get involved in governance, and that's because something is not going right. And I'm sure, as I said, my colleagues will tell you that I'm a very persistent resident, very stubborn, but I hadn't ever really considered what value I could bring to the organisation, or what value I could kind of bring to my community. And that was where Poplar HARCA were great, in terms of opening my eyes to actually, you can inform things here, you can take decisions, you can shape the way that you and your kind of neighbours live, which was fantastic. So I soon became a member of the services committee in 2012. 2 years later, I became the chair of that committee. And then I very quickly transitioned from being chair of that committee, which I still hold now, but also then sat on the main board, and I've been sitting on the main board of Poplar HARCA since 2014. And I became vice chair of that board a couple of years ago. And again, a really strong will from all of the board and all of the staff that actually a chair, if not vice chair, should always be a resident, actually leading kind of from the helm. And I think as someone who's never worked in social housing, there's definitely a lot of challenges to navigate, but Poplar HARCA have been great in terms of supporting me and other residents every step of the way. I've learned so much over the last 10 years, and have been really instrumental in some of the strategic decision making and kind of direction of Poplar HARCA over the past 5 to 10 years. But I think most importantly for me, being able to shape and give back to my local community has been absolutely satisfying and rewarding. I've seen decisions we've taken as a board fundamentally impact and change the lives of people in our communities. And I don't think there's any greater benefit than that, in all honesty. And I think I would just end just by saying that nobody knows your communities like the residents that live there. And that has got to be the guiding principle of all of our work moving forward. If you really want to understand the communities that you're working within, that you're building within, that you're shaping, you have got to work with the residents that live there. And there's enormous value and opportunity in doing that, as Babu said earlier, and really connecting with those residents and really involving them in all aspects of social housing and public housing. It's a fantastic area of opportunity, and residents, as Babu said earlier, again, is an untapped resource of opportunity, ideas, and real kind of innovation, I think, that can drive a lot of change. So that's me. Thank you very much, and I'll pass back to Gabby.
Right, I'm just gonna, okay, yeah, great. Okay, these are just some quick slides, and I really think rather than go into these, I'm just gonna pick out some key elements. So you can see the level of detail. Now this is about a scheme, a regeneration scheme. I know Sarah said we talk about this a bit, but this is where we're talking about a knockdown and rebuild scheme. So there are lots of elements to this. We will have to move residents. We will have to work on the scheme over a long period of time. And this is really setting out how we engage residents through that process. I think one of the key things for me, which I think is really interesting, is this idea of independent advice. This ITLA, I know you probably won't see it because it's in a big long list of things, but this independent advisor that's coming to residents and saying, like, these are big changes for you. You really need to understand what's going on, and we're going to help you to do that. So as well as us taking residents through in a really detailed way, through a number of key decisions, selecting a partner who's going to build these homes, doing the designs, working with architects, appointing those architects, choosing who's going to develop this with them. These are such big decisions, and we take residents through step by step by step. So advice all the way, engagement, and we also kind of keep rechecking. So we'll meet regularly, we'll go over old stuff, we'll make sure the residents are clear on what we do. And then when we make big decisions, we've got the backing of the community behind us. And when things go wrong, as they often do, we're able to call on that support to help us through those difficulties. Because I don't think any of us expect to get it right first time, every time. And to be honest, we probably expect to get it wrong first time, every time. So the key thing for us is like making sure that we've got that kind of relationship. The other thing is to have some key promises, to set out what we're going to do and to measure and monitor against it. It's us saying, if we don't stick to these, you can call us out. There are penalties. There are things that we will not be able to break when we work with you. We worked with these promises with the community. These promises came from the community. They said, these are the things we want you to do for us. And we said, we will do this. You will have this commitment from us. Again, this is a slide that really just shows you the level of work that is needed, but also the rewards of this work, because what this has meant is that we've had that support all the way. We've had residents helping us to make decisions. We've generally been able to improve on those decisions by using residents and their knowledge and insight. It's made the whole process work in a way that we couldn't have done otherwise, but it needs a good level of engagement. And that's something that I think we would say, once you get into this, it gets easier and easier and easier, and residents will drive this for you, as well as you being able to put the pieces together. So it really is a self-fulfilling prophecy that once you start, it will get better and better and better. We supplement what we do. We make sure the residents understand the best schemes that are around the country, maybe even internationally. We want to make sure that residents understand the best that's available, because we want to give them the best. So that knowledge is really important. I mean, sometimes for residents, you get a sense of, if you've never seen something, you don't know what you could have had. So you have to see what else is out there so that you can really kind of achieve the best. And these workshops, they're fun, they're engaging, they're interactive. We really make it work well. And actually, I mean, I think that's what I'm going to pause at and stop, because I think it is that it's an enjoyable experience. If you get it right, it really is great for everybody. And on that note, thank you very much for your time.